We'll call the meeting to order and welcome everybody. January 12th, 2026 council work session. Can we get a roll call, please?
Councillor Fisher?
Here.
Councillor Nunnally?
Aye. Here.
Councillor Walker?
Here.
Councillor Gabrielle? Here. Councillor Blank? Here. Councillor Dowd?
Here.
Councillor Waterman?
Here.
Mayor Hunter?
Here. We have two items on our agenda this evening. The first is Parks and Recreation Master Plan update, and the second one is the council member Ward 3 vacancy presentations. And we'll start with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan update. Staff report.
Yes, Mayor and Council, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chad Finch, our Parks and Recreation Director, for the staff report.
Thanks, Jared. Mayor and Council, tonight before you, the Kalispell Parks and Recreation Department, in partnership with Mike Terrell, Landscape Architecture, will be presenting an update to the city's Parks and Recreation Master Plan that was originally adopted in 2006. This master plan serves as the city's long-term strategic framework for park development, recreation programming, open space preservation, and facility management. The update is currently approximately 60% complete, with key milestones achieved, including comprehensive community engagement, a system-wide inventory and assessment, a needs analysis, and the development of preliminary goals, strategies, and priority projects for the next 10 years. At this time, I'd like to turn over the presentation to Mike Terrell, who will provide additional detail on the work completed to date and the next steps in our planning process.
Great. Thank you, Chad. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Mike Terrell, Landscape Architect, Principal of the MTLA. Our team consists of Berger Partnership, WGM Engineering here in Kalispell, and Nexus Planning and Planning Group out of Spokane as well. And so we've had the pleasure of working in Kalispell for the past about 6 months or so on the Parks and Recreation Plan. What I'm going to do tonight is give you an overview of the process to date and give you kind of a hint of what is included in the plan at 60%. As Chad mentioned, this is a 60% plan, so there's lots of opportunity for fine tuning, and we've got a lot of work to do to bring it to the finish line. So what is a Parks and Recreation Plan? So back in 2006, the city adopted a Parks and Recreation Plan to chart out what would be the future of Parks and Recreation for Kalispell. And if you review that plan, there's a lot of great things in it, but it was really, really kind of aggressive in terms of number of people that would be living in Kalispell within the time frame of the plan. It actually projected 60,000 people living in Kalispell within the time frame, within the 20 years. So obviously we haven't achieved that, but there's a lot of really great ideas, and we've tried to leverage that as well. So as Chad mentioned, the Parks and Rec plan lays out the framework for the next 20 years. And there's a lot of things that go into that, balancing what the community, what we hear from the community, priorities we get from council, input from staff, and how we can kind of map out what opportunities there are in the future as well. The plan includes assessing community needs, and that's based upon a lot of the community engagement, engaging the public in a lot of different ways, identifying service gaps, and service gaps include areas of the city that don't have a park. It also includes park facilities that are not currently included in the park system. And setting standards and policies, so laying out the foundation that decisions can be made in the future as well through standards and policies. Mapping priorities, where facilities could be in the future so that they can be built out, so we can start to plan for maybe property acquisition or partnerships and things like that. Implementation and strategies, then recreation planning, because that's a really important component of it, is creating facilities that recreation planning can occur on so we can provide recreation programs to the community. And then funding and investment. So one of the important things to do with this process is make sure that the plan for Parks and Recreation aligns with other city plans as well. And the 2006 plan was aligned with the comprehensive plan and adopted as the Parks and Recreation element of the comprehensive plan. So that's one of the things we want to make sure that we're aligned with other plans within the community. And the other thing that's really important to note is there's a really the city of Kalispell has a really great trails plan. The Trails 2040 plan is something that we're looking to make sure that we have connectivity, but we're not repeating the work of the Trails plan within the Parks and Recreation plan. The Parks plan also should support walking, biking, and park to neighborhood connectivity to make sure that again, those service gaps, if you have an opportunity to get to a park, you can get to those parks. And coordinates capital investment, maintenance, and grant funding as well. So the current population based upon, this flex is based upon a lot of the planning work that's been done over the last year, about 33,000, projected in 2045 to be about 54,000. And so those are important numbers that we take into account as we're looking at providing parks and recreation facilities. One of the other things that we look at is what the balance between the current city limits, how big the city is as it is now, and then what the growth policy boundary is, because the city has been and will expand into that growth policy boundary over time, and the parks providing facilities within those areas where annexations occur and growth occurs are important components of a Parks and Recreation plan to give a level of service to the community for everyone in the community as well. So a little bit of overview on our community engagement. We did stakeholder interviews with a wide range of stakeholders back in July. We did park inventories visiting all the parks within the park system. We also did an open house on July 8th, both picnic in the park and the ice cream social. We had a community survey that was really very detailed, and we certainly appreciate everybody that took the time to take the survey and answer questions that provided really invaluable information to us. We had over 1,000 participants, which we feel is a really great representation of the community. But because we want to hear from everybody as much as possible, we have multiple ways to connect with the community, including open houses. And we had an open house number 2 on August 19th, again with picnic in the park on the 20th. We had our local representative, Stephanie Reynolds from WGM, was at the fair booth talking to folks about the plan as well. And then we had an open house on November 3rd, open house number 3 on November 25th. And then we're going to have another open house tomorrow night. And so we'd really appreciate folks to come out and give us some feedback. Again, it's another opportunity for the community to tell us kind of how they feel. And we're in the really critical stages of developing level of service and what the priorities are for the plan going forward. And then plan for adoption here in early 2026. Some of the things I'm just going to briefly, one of the things we've had is a lot of comments. And so these are all comments that you've all heard. The question, the survey that we had, homeless issues, there's not enough pickleball courts, there's challenges with getting folks with physical disabilities into parks, not enough trails. I used to walk in Woodland Park, but don't feel like it's safe anymore. And summer programs, so additional feedback on summer programs in the rec side as well. So what you see on the right is called a word cloud in the shape of a tree. And what it does is we took all of the feedback from question 19 that we got, which is an open-ended, and what it does is it evaluates which word showed up the most. And so parks and trails and accessibility and bikes and splash, pickleball and people. So those are key things that came up during, and so we use those to try and get a feel for what the community is really kind of distilling it down for specific things. Again, another question was what specific improvements are needed in Kalispell parks and trails? Just maintain what we have. And we heard that quite a bit, and that's going to be a theme that really is going to resonate throughout our discussion, certainly as within the plan. Homeless issue, again, more restrooms everywhere, splash pads and park equipment, bike trails need maintenance, more security officers. And again, So question number 25, are there any specific parks, trails, or community spaces you would like to see be further developed in Kalispell? So looking over the headlights for what we'd like to see in the future. Many parks need updated playgrounds. Again, taking care of the things that we have. Parkline trail, maybe a splash pad, and then folks being really very kind of visionary is like an indoor soccer facility. We heard of indoor aquatic facilities as well. And so those are the types of things that, again, we look at the priorities and what the feedback is, and then we put them together in the plan, and then as we go through the process with you and the community, try and identify what those priorities, because the priorities have to align with the realities of budgets. So summary really is maintain what we have, increase awareness and communications with the community so they know more about rec programs and things that are going on, connecting the system, getting people to the parks, targeting new facilities, identifying demand for new facilities like a swim, indoor swim or indoor community rec center with indoor or outdoor opportunities as well. Expand programs, improve parks, replace aging playgrounds, access for all, a lot of access to physical access to a lot of different parks are important to comments that we heard in the community, and then comments about environmental and increased native plantings and habitat protection, and then public safety. So where we are building on success, and one of the things that we've talked with staff about is like, well, what has happened since the 2006 plan was adopted, and looking back at the plan and all the things that were listed in it, what things have been completed, and how does that kind of align with where we are going forward. And one of the things that's important to note is that since 2012, there's been 5 different playgrounds that have been replaced. So that's one of the things that is happening within the system already, is that meeting kind of the needs and the comments that the community is shared with us through this process. And then restrooms, Woodland Park restroom remodel, Lions Park remodeled. And then looking at facilities, because, and we're not diving into the facilities component of the Parks and Rec department, but also some really key components and facilities have been improved. Depot Park, the Parks and Recreation Office remodel, and from all the discussions that we've heard, that having the Parks and Rec department in Depot Park has made a big difference in that part of town. Re-roofing, public safety building, and a number of other important things. And then urban forestry, the important work that urban forestry has been doing, and then the collaboration between the urban forestry group and parks is really critical as well. So where we are, again, identifying that level of service. And like I said, level of service, there's a lot of different things that we look at, in gaps, and whether people are within a certain distance of a park that they can access park facilities, or do we have against peer communities or nationwide, and it's not a cut and dried or black and white thing that Kalispell should be aligned with a community of 30,000 in Indiana and have the same facilities, because you don't have the same recreational opportunities. Indiana, for instance, doesn't have Glacier National Park just down the road. So what we try and do is make sure that we tailor the level of service to the community, so we make sure it makes sense. And so within it's a little hard to read here, but what you're seeing up there on the board in the lower right is a comparison basically with Helena, and there's not always apples to apples, so we've got to look at it kind of closely. But like, for instance, Helena has a tremendous amount of natural open space that's part of the Parks and Recreation system. So they might be weighted more in one way than another. So again, we're looking at those and trying to make sense in an apples to apples way. So again, the level of service, we're trying to identify what we have now and where we would like to be, or whether we want to maintain where we're at now over the next 20 years. So going back to access and distribution, what you're seeing is the dark green are Kalispell parks, and the lighter green are a service area of about a half mile. So those are generally about 10-minute walks from parks. And so there's, so you can tell in the core area of Kalispell. So in the southern area, in the upper right, the big dark green area, that's Woodland Park. And so what we're trying to do is identify where where there's not folks getting, don't have a park within half a mile or 10-minute walk. And so how do we start to close those gaps? And that's part of what we're looking for in the next step. So access, distribution of parks, and you can see in the northern service area, there's a lot of, Kalispell is growing to the north with annexations, but we don't have any city parks in those areas right now. However, one of the discussions we're having is there are HOA parks occurring in those neighborhoods as well. And so that's kind of a discussion that we're having as we go from 60% up to 90% and then finalizing the plan, what the relationship is between city parks and HOA parks and service. So vision and goals, and this is a draft. It's just to get us started where we'd like to see, what we want out of our Parks and Recreation Plan is where Parks and Recreation inspire health, happiness, economic vitality, and environmental stewardship for generations to come. We envision a future where every person, regardless of age, ability, or background, can access safe, beautiful, and well-maintained parks, trails, and programs that celebrate Kalispell's landscape, heritage, community spirit, and economic opportunity. And so that, again, that's a draft, and so we're working through comments on this and many other components of the plan as well. So our vision and goals, starting with goal number 1, maintain and enhance existing parks and facilities. So we heard loud and clear that's like maintain what we have, and so that's goal number 1. Goal number 2, ensure access to parks, playgrounds, and recreational programs by prioritizing underserved communities and universal design principles. And universal design principles are just a matter of creating a playground or a facility that someone in a wheelchair or grandmother or grandfather in a walker or something can get and access and enjoy those facilities with their whole family. Create safe, welcoming, and comfortable parks for all visitors. Plan for growth and evolving needs through community-focused strategies and obtained from public engagement. And number 5, recreational programs delivery for all Kalispell residents. So that's all age groups and fill those needs and make sure, and sometimes it's like, well, maybe this need is being filled by somebody other than the Parks and Recreation Department, so resources maybe go somewhere else. And number 6, secure diverse, stable funding to support parks expansion, maintenance, and recreation program. And that's really the goal of every department, is to make sure that they can plan ahead and they have the resources to meet the needs of the community. Leverage parks to promote health, community cohesion, and economic vitality. One of the things that we've included, economic vitality, there's been several studies within the community about creating facilities that might create economic development. One of the interesting things we had with our concerts in the park at Depot Park was that I'd say half the people I talked to at Depot Park were not Kalispell residents. They were visiting from someplace else. They were staying up at Whitefish. They heard there was a concert. They came down to Kalispell to attend the concert. So that's one of the things that parks can serve as well. And certainly, the sports complex does that in great variety as well. Preserve and celebrate Kalispell's cultural, natural, and historic identity through park design and programming. Woodland Park is a perfect example of that. It's a great historic park, unlike any other park in a lot of the country. It's a great resource. And then do parks and recreation planning, continuous. It's not just doing parks and rec planning for today for the next 20 years, but it's continuing looking up and identifying where the changes might need to happen. And maintain a high-performing, adequately staffed Parks and Recreation Department through professional development, technology, and strategic growth. And then looking at the priorities. And so these are our draft priorities that we've come up with: prioritizing maintenance of existing assets, updating playgrounds for safety and accessibility, improving and upgrading existing parks, and master planning. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about master planning. Strategic acquisition and development for equitable access. Again, those areas where the city is growing, but we don't yet have parks. So in this map, there's several things going on. Is one, how do we get identifying that we have a need for neighborhood parks up north, for instance. And so how do we achieve that? That's part of the planning process and feedback that we're looking for. A community park up north as well. So having a larger facility that, because up in northern Kalispell, it takes quite a while to get to an existing community park. Now, the city has a great partnership in creation of the Ashley Park project, which is going to be amazing. But again, it's not quite meeting the needs up north. So looking at how do we meet that over the next 20 years. And then there's the Northwest Sports Complex, which is park property already. That's the orange star in the on the western edge of Kalispell, on that North Kalispell. So that's a piece of property that's already slated for sports complex, but it needs to be needs funding for development. And then in terms of master plans, which I mentioned earlier, there's a need to identify what we need to do in the key community parks like Woodland Park and Lawrence Park over the next 20 years to improve those, make them more functional, make a, restore, for example, in Woodland Park, restoring the pond to its glory and doing things like that. And the other thing is identifying things that could happen in those parks. So when there's an opportunity, funding opportunity comes along, or strategic partnerships, then you go, hey, we've got an opportunity, we've identified it through a master planning process that this would go here. So those are the types of things to look at through a master planning process that really gets you a roadmap for those individual really key community parks. The next one is an aquatic facility study. And that's where looking at the current aquatic facility and looking at what strategic investments have to happen in the future, and so that you can start planning for that. And so the other component of that could be looking at what would it take to have an indoor aquatic facility if you chose to do, and what strategic partnerships might go along with that. And we talk a little bit about that in the master plan as well. And then future growth, the purple areas. And then one of the things that we heard a little bit about early on in the process and what the potential would be is a potential water trail, which is a really low impact, low capital expenditure to get people to recognize that you could get on the Stillwater River and kayak or float down it and really add to that recreational diversity in Kalispell. So how do we get there? And we don't have the answer to that yet, but it's a combination of many, many different things. So budgeting and planning for the future, partnerships, associations, schools, and others. There's already some great relationships with the school district. You have 2 school parks that are great relationships. There's a recreation relationship in using gym space. So leveraging all those resources in the community to make it so that you've got facilities that serve a lot of different needs. User fees, which are already part of the component, and looking at how those are framed in the future. And then there's just looking again at what there might be like a special improvement district. And so I know after the 2006 plan, there was a run at having a parks maintenance district. That's no longer an option, but there is still on the books at the state that you could fund aquatic centers or sports facilities through a special improvement district. And that might give an opportunity to have a district that is focused on those types of facilities that might bring in tourism dollars and things like that, and free up other parks funding to take care of parks and other kind of parks and playgrounds and things like that. So those are some of the things to look at. And again, we don't have even 10% of the answers, but that's a big component of what we've got to try and work out between 60 and 90%. And whatever others there might be, grants and opportunities like that. So with that, open it up to any questions or discussions that you might have for us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to do something a little bit different in terms of the work sessions, and that having public comment come before the discussion, so we have that to factor in as part of the discussion, but we can have kind of clarifying questions now, but in kind of dipping into discussion, we'll wait until after public comment, if that makes sense. Mr. Fisher, did you have any clarifying questions?
That's fine with me.
Okay.
I do have some questions after that.
Okay. All right, we'll open it up to public comment on the master plan. Any thoughts before we get into discussion on it? Yeah, please state your name at the mic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Dylan Tabish with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and really excited at this opportunity. I want to start by giving the city staff a huge shout out for embarking on this. As somebody who does public engagement on a daily basis, it's a ton of work, and it's really impressive how much engagement your staff got from the public. I was at Woodland Park swim lessons, and there was QR codes on the fence. I was walking through down Highline Trail or Parkland Trail. There were QR codes. I mean, that it is hard for anyone to say they did not know the city was embarking on this. So really, shout out to you guys. It was a great effort. I'm here to express our interest from Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to partner on a specific park project at Woodland Park Pond. And this has been an idea that's been talked about for a long time. We've got a lot of great successful examples across the state of urban ponds for families to go fishing. Here in this valley, Pine Grove Pond is kind of the gold standard in all of the state of Montana. It's one of the 5 most visited fishing access sites in the entire state. In July, we'll have over 100,000 vehicle counts going down to Pine Grove Pond. And that's not even that easy to access on foot. You got to drive to it. And so our whole idea or vision behind these urban ponds is this is a place where families who maybe don't have the means or the time to run up the Middle Fork or get out on Flathead Lake or one of our other lakes, but they want to get outside. They want their kids to go fishing. And so these urban ponds are intended, exactly what staff said, as a place within a few mile radius that they can get to. Think Shady Lane, which we're in the process of improving. Dry Bridge. We've got some of these other really small ponds that we've tried over the years to turn into great sources or places for families to go fishing. And we really see an opportunity at Woodland Park. We would love to partner with the city and maybe revitalize that pond a little bit, make it so that the water quality is such that it's a good place for trout. And FWP is committed to stocking that with trout indefinitely into the future. We also have a fund generated by a local gentleman named Bill Camps, who passed away and left us with a fund that was intended specifically to support families fishing here in Northwest Montana. So we have a really cool, unique opportunity to get our families outside fishing, and we just look at Woodland Park as a perfect place where we could really bring that to life. If the city is interested and if the public is interested. So just up here to give a quick shout out to that. We have some examples for you to look at. Columbia Falls at River's Edge Park had a big grassy field, and it felt underutilized and could be better used for families getting outside, and they worked with us and some other business partners, and we turned that now into a great family fishing pond. And so don't take my word for it. Please talk to the Columbia Falls City Council and their staff. It's been such a huge hit that they actually just came back to us this year and said we'd love to put some more fishing decks that are a little more wheelchair accessible and more accessible for grandparents taking their grandkids out fishing. And so within a matter of days, we told them $70,000 and the motivation to make that happen. Not saying we're going to foot the whole bill, but we are willing. If the city is interested, we will make it happen. So just putting that out there for the public to consider, for council to consider. I caught my first fish at an urban pond in Missoula, so this is kind of personal to me too. McCormick Park down by the Osprey Fields now. So in understanding if it's not sustainable, obviously we won't go down this road, but if it's something we want to just look at, we are willing to help pay and maybe pay for all of just the study of if this is even a thing that could happen. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and again, kudos to staff for all your hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Tavish. Any other public comment on this topic? Anyone online? Okay, council discussion. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm glad you did it that way. Dry Bridge Park would continue to be stocked even if Woodland were very good. Okay. Just curious. First of all, I did read through this plan. There's a few things I talked to Chad about, some typos and stuff. Kalispell doesn't have an extra L in chapter 4 or 5, first couple paragraphs. But the big thing to this whole thing that came down to me, coming from a parks background, is funding is the key to success. I mean, that's everything for all of us to struggle with, from trail maintenance, additional trails, taking care of existing facilities and parks. It's just huge. With that, I have a couple questions. What is our standing with School District 5 and use of gyms at this point? Has there been any change? Is it still pay to play when they were going through their bonding issues? Is that been remedied since they got their bond? And what's that future look like? Are we paying or are we not?
Yeah, we pay for our use there, and they pay for their use in the parks. So it didn't go away with their bonding issue that they had, so.
And that's set up as a flat fee? How is that?
They have a table, and they have different methodologies for different types of groups. So we understand where we're at, and we know the fees. They did hire somebody, right? Correct? They're still in the process. Okay, they are hiring somebody that will manage the school calendars for use of space, but they've been really receptive to our needs. We do know that the school district needs are first and foremost, so we do get moved around a little bit, but we try to be good partners in the sense we upload or give them all of our needs early so that we can hopefully get the times that we're looking at. But I think it works well. I understand their perspective. And when we had this discussion and listened to their reasoning, it made sense to us because that's what our expectation was. And so they are working as well to make reservations in our parks for tennis and different programs that they bring to us as well. So it'll work out.
Okay. And then when I get into funding and all the potential land and water conservation, several have dried up for you in the last few years, true or false? Federal funding and state funding, a lot of those potential grant opportunities have dried up. Or very, very competitive.
Every grant is very competitive currently. We are very fortunate. We are in the middle of an LWCF grant. Our original allocation, we've been able to use for Woodland Water Park to make some improvements. Through the process, we've seen some values from when we originally submitted the grant to when we went to bid. Things have elevated in cost, so we didn't get through the entire list. We reached back out and found that not all projects that were in our cycle were completed or able to move forward. So they allocated even more funds to us, and we asked for an extension. So hopefully by this June, we will have completed, I would say, the good majority of projects that we originally had asked for in our LWCF grant projects.
Thank you. I was very glad to see indoor sports facility. You all know that about me. I think it's very necessary in this valley. I know, again, we come down to funding for something like that, and the study from the Commerce Department didn't run the numbers to the city's satisfaction at all, is way off, which brings me back to all these funding mechanisms and lots of talk of writing grants. Do you internally in the Parks Department have a grant writer, or who is doing that for you with the staff that you have and seeking outside funds, or maybe a major contributor to something like a sports facility and or aquatics facility?
So I will introduce you to my staff. Each one of them has completed successful grant projects. It's kind of on a, do you have time to submit? So we'll look at each other's calendars. We try to back each other up. But again, each one of my staff members have been able to write a successful grant. Maybe not ideal, but it's been a means to an end.
Very good. I think that's it for now. Chad, I would like to have a little meeting with you and talk about a few things from my perspective and not take up everybody's time with that. But I'd love to do a coffee with you and talk about a few things if that's appropriate at some point. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Nunley.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for your presentation. It was well done. Jed, kind of like you, I just have a question, see if you guys know. I know that there were 2 indoor sports facilities that were in the process of being constructed or were breaking ground. Do you know if, I believe the one south of Majestic Valley Arena is not happening, but I believe out by Glacier National Airport, there is a indoor sports facility. Do you know, is that still going?
Jared, do you know anything about those? Sorry, but you're planning that back on.
There's still plans out there. We'll just put it that way.
Okay.
It's not dead. The demand is there, as Jed mentioned. So there's still a lot of parties out there trying to make it happen. You know, they're very, very costly. As Jed mentioned, I believe, you know, the Tourism Business Improvement District, they talked about a facility of $70 million. I mean, that was a pretty large facility, but there's still definitely an effort out there, and hopefully one comes to fruition. And but yeah, the talks of the ones I've been hearing is still up there by the Majestic. If they can make that happen, it'd be great. The PUD is already in place, so it's more
Right.
just coming up with the funding and the capital to make it happen.
I'd love to see any of those, whether it's private or some kind of public involvement. I definitely, I do agree with Jed on that. A lot of public, it kind of doesn't pencil out always, but certainly I think it is something to take a look at. I just want to step in real quick, thank Mr. Tavish for coming down, because I know him and I have talked about this project down at Woodland. Chad, can you tell me the last time that Woodland Park was dredged?
I don't know that it's ever been dredged, from my knowledge. That pond at its deepest at any given point is 3 feet deep. So years ago, Dylan and I have had conversations. We actually had their biologists out there, and we did a survey after a winter kill to see what was out there. We also did had conversations with Roger Noble and Brad Bennett about water issues. So there is springs throughout that park, but the production of them has subsided. So Dylan and I had conversations about what that looks like, and how, you know, again, 10,000 foot level, trying to figure out how we can make that idea work down there. But as far as I know, in the history of Woodland Park, I do not believe it's ever been dredged.
Okay. I know I talked with a couple folks that, and I've been trying to find it. They gave me an old button for Find the Swamp Monster down in Woodland Park. That was a fundraiser done in the early to mid 70s, where they did a clean out dredging, and they cleaned it, replanted fish in there. And I understand from those folks it was a very big success. The community really got out and really got behind the funding. And I think if we had something between Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and our staff, and then did a, you know, kind of a fundraising to do something, I think we could get something. And I totally agree that we need to have a good handicap fishing area. Would be amazing down at Woodland Park. It's already a lot there. So I would fully support that in some kind of fashion.
Mr. Dowd?
Thank you, Your Honor. So first off, I'm really happy to see that we're still thinking about Woodland Park for a fishing pond. As you all know, the only reason I'm here is so that I can fish in peace. But anyway, I am concerned that I don't want, I want to make sure that we're taking into consideration the winter hockey that happens there as well. That's not going to be disrupted by this. I know that making it deeper will make that a little bit more dangerous. So as long as we're planning and looking at that, I'm great. I'm fine with it. My reintroduction to fishing when I moved back to Montana after being in the Army was I took my kids out to Murphy Lake with the Fish and Game program for the ice fishing, and that totally just got me hooked for you know, the rest of my life. So it is very meaningful to have these places where kids can go fish, and especially in a safe, close environment where, you know, if they get wet by messing around in the snow and ice, they can go somewhere and warm up, and it's not too far away. So yeah, I'm definitely eager to keep talking about that. I'd also like to, for us to think about private partnerships with this as well. And I would also like to look a little bit at maybe some duck education that might happen there. I know I'm the duck guy, but you know, the native ducks that are out there. I know that we have a community here, and there's probably opportunities for a lot of retired folks to come in there and educate kids about ducks and, you know, if you're going to feed them, even though we made it illegal to feed the ducks there, you know, these are the kind of things that you should give them, not bread, not, you know, that kind of thing. So I would love to see an education program, but I don't really want to see it city funded. I would love to have the community involved with that. So anyway, enough about Woodland Park. It's kind of my pet park, but I have looked around. I did study this, or I looked into it a couple of years ago, pretty much in depth. We're one of the only big 7 cities in Montana that does not have a special needs playground. That is a little bit of a stain on our city, really, because we do have. Our population isn't immense, but the population of Flathead County is. Did you guys look at anything like that? Once again, I think we have great opportunities to partner with private entities to make this happen. But the ongoing maintenance of it would probably fall to the city. So I just wanted to see if we looked at any kind of special needs playground being here in Kalispell.
So we did do, one of the partner organizations did walk through, and we talked about accessibility and accessibility to playgrounds and the current status from their perspective. They're experts in that area. So Ashley Creek Park, obviously with that coming online, will be one of the first parks within our park system that will be accessible. We are looking at, when we upgrade parks, on how to address those concerns and make them more viable. One of our partners years ago, their goal at the youth athletic complex was to build another accessible playground to complement Miracle Field. I don't know the status of that one. They had some other priorities before they got to that, but that was going to be one of the first in the valley, as I understood it. So, but we are cognizant moving forward that this is something that we need to address, and how do we address it in some of these parks through different means, whether it's a smaller structure or if it's just simple adjustments that we can make. But again, we used through the process, Mike and his team did work with one of the partners in order to address some of the concerns that we've heard regarding playgrounds.
Okay, and as you probably know, I've kind of made it my pastime to have late summer and early fall door knocking around town here. This is something that comes up quite a bit. There's actually quite a bit of concern about it around the community, and a lot of support for it as well. And like I said, if we can pull this off without having it be a big cost to the taxpayers, I think that'd be a great win. There's definitely some organizations in town that would love the positive PR that this would, have attached to it, and I think we can make it happen. So I would love to start maybe a special session on that would be great. Obviously we would need time to prepare, and I'm not an expert in this field, so I would look to you to put something together for that session, but it doesn't have to happen in the immediate future, just as long as we keep it on our radar. Hopefully maybe this summer we can have something like that. That was all my questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Waterman.
Thank you, Your Honor. And thank you to staff for all the outreach. I have a couple of different questions, but one of the ones that sort of jumped out, and I could tell that we have some contractors who are from Spokane area. They refer to, in the partnership area, a Spokane model. And I was wondering if that could be explained a little bit more. It was sort of in the Together Kalispell framework that there was a Spokane model of.
There was, recently, there is a bond levy collaboration between the city of Spokane's Parks and Recreation Department and the school district. And so they ran, and as you can imagine, it was kind of fraught with peril. They ran a parallel bond for the school district that was pretty significant, and a long-term levy for the Parks and Recreation Department, 20-year levy. And they both passed. The school bond passed significantly. The park levy was a little closer. And so in that, and it's really, and I don't know that I shared in the master plan, but I think it's Spokane Together is, if you look up Spokane Together, you Google it, you can see kind of how they crafted their projects together. For instance, one elementary school replacement is going to have a Boys and Girls Club within the elementary school. It's associated with a park. And so they're going to share recreation facilities and park facilities with the school. So you'll have multiple entities, partnerships, working together within this design of a brand new elementary school that'll be utilized a lot. And so that is a model to take a look at. It's pretty unique. Again, it was a very challenging election cycle last November to get through, and they were successful. So it's just one of the, and that the numbers are huge in Spokane for that. The bond and the levies were gigantic. But the history of partnerships with the school district, with Kalispell Park, I think one of the things we discuss is that there's going to be schools that are built to the north and expanding areas to the south, and looking at those opportunities to continue those partnerships between the school district and the Parks Department. So just theoretically, if the school district purchases or has an opportunity to purchase property up north somewhere, can the city and the school district go together to add another 2 or 3 acres to have a school park collaboration? So you don't have to build a separate parking lot for a park. You don't, so you can collaborate. The playground equipment could all be used for the same. So you leverage your resources in a different way. And so that's what, it's really the Spokane model, is that they're leveraging their resources as much as possible between those two entities.
Thank you for fleshing that out. I was curious about it, but happy to have the
We'll do
explanation.
a better job of
And then it seems like the other sort of good funding, nothing really does happen without funding, is identifying something like a partnership. The Kalispell Parks Foundation is mentioned in your recommendation. But I know that like Missoula and Bozeman both have partnership programs as well in their communities. And I know that here in Kalispell, we have like the Chamber, who is creating sort of a foundation for community enhancements. And I guess this is a question, open-ended question to the mayor, to staff. How do we take all these different ideas about needing a partner out there, a philanthropic partner, and help them work together? Because I, as somebody who's done fundraising before, it's just hard if you have multiple similarly aligned foundations out there to help with something like public parks. So it'd be great to see something for, I know there's talks about a partnership for the park line, that there's other things like the Chamber is doing, to get everybody to work together and be like, maybe there is a community foundation. It would be interesting just to see how we as a public entity would engage that nonprofit to come into an existence. And I just hope that we can find some way to maybe take some of these ideas so that we don't just have them out there as ideas, but when we have other partners who are interested in doing that, that's created. And then I guess my last question really comes down to bicycle paths. And I know that we have a bicycle plan that's in our transportation plan, but then there seems to be bicycle paths mentioned within this plan. And I wonder, do we really work to make sure that sometimes we're looking at our the bicycle plan so that we're not just about being on roads, but also how it intersects with parks? It would be nice to see some sort of development of a bicycle plan that included the parks and the roads, because I think we talk about things being interconnected. Some of these parks are always going to have a street access that's needed between them as well, and it'd be great to see, as we look at the intermodal level, to have a comprehensive plan that actually talks about the transportation via bicycles in parks on streets as a comprehensive mode of transportation? Because I can see, again, there's some things that are highlighted in this plan where would help connect somebody from a street way to the other way. And I'm not sure that I see a plan that's like that. Those are sort of my questions. So things I would love to see fleshed out.
Yeah. Mr. Walker.
Thanks. Yeah, I want to echo the sentiments. Staff's done a great job. This is a very comprehensive plan. There's a lot to it. I think a lot of stuff has been covered already. I just had a smaller idea or question / idea. I know there is a small food truck court along the Parkline Trail, right off of 93 there. What is that arrangement? Do we lease that? Is it paid for? Is it open?
So that portion of property actually belongs to the mall. So it was completed as part of the park line. We didn't want to leave that little triangle piece as a remnant. So council had approved that for continuity that would be done. And then the mall capitalized on that area being able to turn it into like a little mini food court area.
Okay. Have we considered leasing out any of our parks space for things like that?
So
Mall areas.
Yeah, so our parking lot, for instance, 2 years ago, I believe, maybe it was 3 years ago, we put out, we had vision that we'd have food court out in the north parking lot area, and that for a small fee during Wednesdays, kind of creating a food truck Wednesday type vibe, because we also know food trucks get pulled to different events in our community, but Wednesday was a day that didn't seem to have a lot going on, that we could pull more food trucks in. And it did okay, but what happened is it kind of was just like really slow. So what we did is combined Picnic in the Park and the food trucks. So we combined 2 concerts into one day, added the food trucks to the front of the area and made one day of it. But yeah, we've talked about it internally about how we could make that area more usable for that. We've talked to food vendors about possibly
Like
doing
all the
like
parks
a long.
too? Woodland, Lawrence, like all, not just Depot, but
So there's so Woodland Park, we have our own concessions, so we don't want to compete with that. Lawrence Park does have limited parking, so we are very cognizant. There are times that we do allow food trucks to go down there, but we also have the food service program that does free meals that goes down there as well. So we try to be mindful, especially Lawrence Park, because it is small, about when and the hours that they operate down there. Some of the other parks, you get different food trucks with different ideas, and we vet their ideas and we try to give them as much opportunity as we can. But usually the limits are what's adjacent to it, as long as they're not. I'm trying to think of some of the things that we've dealt with, not having the competing like a brick and mortar and then having a food truck adjacent to it, because we also do not parking permits. Our vending permits are good for right-of-ways, so anything within a parking spot is available. So we do try to be mindful of what they're around and what kind of noise or traffic that they'll bring, but generally speaking, we work with most food vendors and kind of vet their idea and try it out and see how it goes for them.
okay. Thank you. I think that was all I had. Hadn't been covered.
Ms. Gabriel?
Thank you, Your Honor. I love the idea of partnering with the community and the schools. Our youth athletic complex is, I think, one of the most successful programs of its kind anywhere. And I know that a lot of our parks were landlocked in a lot of places where there is no land around it. I think specifically of that one, and I don't know the answer. Have we taken inventory of any properties around any of our parks currently that may or may not be available? That'd be question one. And number two, was some of the parks, like I live up in Northridge, and I think Northridge Park is probably one of the most underutilized city parks we have. Have we looked at those places and figured out gosh, maybe we could do some more development there to make it more usable. I mean, some people use it for, I think they must have some kids' practices of some kind that take place there, but for the most part, it's empty, and I don't even know how many acres that is, but it's a huge piece of land. So, I don't know, you may have already talked about that, but that was the biggest thing that came to mind for me was what could we better utilize that we already have?
So your first question about adding acreage to existing parks, the majority do have confines. Properties adjacent are private. But through this, we did identify that like Greenbrier Park is adjacent to MDOT right away, and there may be an opportunity to extend south a little bit. And it's a neighborhood park, but it could utilize more green space. So that one's been identified. Northridge Park is a little bit difficult in the sense of how you get people to the plateau. It's an embankment up, and trying over the course of time, we've had different discussions with different groups and different people of what they would like to see, but then coming back to the accessibility issue is how do we get that amenity up there and still provide an opportunity for everybody to get to that location. So those are, as ideas get flushed out in communities' desires to have things, it's a great park because of the land that's there to develop into or develop other amenities within that park. It's probably going to be a little more difficult than maybe one of our more flatter parks.
Yes, Ms. Blank.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the thorough master plan. I know it's 60%, but it does take a lot of time. And I also agree, you've done a great job getting out, having people give you feedback, and the Fish and Wildlife, it's awesome to see what else might come forward. I also found that it was very creative. Your water trail is something that we haven't talked about a lot tonight, but it's definitely something I'd love to learn a little bit more about in terms of what you're thinking for put-ins and takeouts, because it seems to me this is a way to connect a huge swath of the community in a way that would, in terms of disabilities, there'd be other ways for people to get in and engage in that, and it both also ages and so on. So I'm just wondering if you could chat a little bit more about that part in terms of put-ins and takeouts and what that might look like.
We're just starting to look at that.
Okay.
So that, one of the areas that we looked at as a potential north put-in it would be potentially, and we haven't talked with Flathead Community College at all, is on, up by their property. So there's, in brainstorming, internal brainstorming, again, I'm not saying that we have partnerships set up,
Yep.
Is that you could have an outdoor recreation program relationship with the community college and a put-in up north that comes down, and you could have the takeout at Lawrence Park. So you've got some really great opportunities. And then continuing on down, and you could get to the county's leisure park access as well. So you could have multiple different locations where people could choose their own distances. So that's what we're looking at right now. And so we're kind of getting it into a framework, and then as a master plan level, just this is an opportunity, and that's how we're looking at it.
And I read through that, and I also saw that you were thinking about shuttles and biking shuttles. So is the thought that there would be a bike trail along the river there, or where was that headed? Seemed like a really interesting idea.
We're still working on that
Yeah.
too.
Okay.
So,
I'm pushing you in ways maybe you're not ready.
but yeah, absolutely. It's like, how do we have we've got a really great, Parkline Trail's a great east-west. So how do we do a north-south, or is there a way to connect, to get people for whatever, if there was a rec shuttle that moved people down, or you could be on, a bike shuttle back and forth. So those are things that, again, we're just in the very beginnings of that to try and figure out whether, and what you'll probably see is a paragraph or two about that.
Yeah.
And this is an opportunity. This is a framework that could happen.
So my last question on that is there any possibility then of thinking about the entire span of that water and looking at other communities and other partners to help manage and advance that thinking?
I think what you'll see is that there'll be a paragraph that says, reach out to other communities.
Okay.
it's just really hard for us to stay within Kalispell.
Right.
And do it. So, we're, capturing all the great ideas so they don't get lost.
Okay.
We had a lot of trail input. It's like, hey, we need to build a trail all the way to Glacier. That's a little bit out of our area.
Right, for sure.
So,
Okay, thank you.
If I may, just to answer, in the county master plan, the goal is to have an access site every 5 miles. And that's what we tried with Church Slough, River Ranchettes. It's a great vision to have if you can secure the property, but the homeowner nearby is always going to be very, very upset. But it's a great vision to have, and one should always be looking at those spatial distances between potential access areas and nab them if you can, because they're not making any more waterfront areas available for public. So I agree with you. What a great concept and way to get people out on the water and active. It's just fantastic.
That's why it's so important for council as they consider these things to create that vision, so that when developments, for example, doesn't always have to be necessarily city, for example. It could also be city driven through development. Silverbrook is, way to the north, but it's got a lot of river frontage. So as developments come in, if it's part of your planning, you can actually, through the PUD, make that part of the development plan. Stillwater Bend, and as you go south through Glacier Town Center and then to the college, and all of a sudden, you could connect this stuff, pretty easily. But staff, obviously we need the vision, and then we need a planning document to tie those types of requirements to, so.
This really doesn't go into the parks plan thing, but it was in my head and I wanted to get it out while I was there. If I wanted to give, let's say like $50 towards a scholarship program for kids in our programs, do we have a way to take that, or is there, what would you tell somebody if they said that to you?
So we do have a scholarship fund, and we generate money through our sports programs photography. So we do have a photographer that takes those sports photos for us, and part of their agreement is to give back to us for that scholarship program. We do have, in the past, when people actually walked into an office and gave us cash, sometimes people would round up and say, put it in your scholarship fund. Doesn't happen as much since we have online, but we do occasionally have people that will give us some money or funds that will go towards our scholarship fund.
Okay, so we do have a fund set aside for that, specifically for scholarships for the programs.
Yes, correct.
And people can give to that if they want.
They can.
Perfect, thanks.
I think when we discussed when we went to the online reservations, there was some discussion at council about the idea of, once they make a payment, they're prompted with, do you want to, pay an extra $1 or $2 to go towards the scholarship fund? And we never quite got there, but I'm still interested in that idea, because it's proactive and every time somebody's making a reservation, it's prompting them of giving them the option. Is that something we can incorporate to our online reservation system?
I will say that we can, but I would defer to staff that has more experience with our software program. But, if that's what council wishes to do through our next fee increase, that could be a discussion that we could have at that time, and we could research to make sure that it is something that we could do online.
Is there any objection to that? I think that'd be a good option. Yeah, Mr. Water.
Just one other comment that I forgot to relay on, because I did have a family member who came to visit who had a teenager who went down to the skate park, his comment was that it seemed like it was designed by engineers and that it was wickedly cool. But from his mom's perspective was that there wasn't sort of the beginner areas that the younger son could do. So it's just a comment of it that it's wickedly cool from one more advanced skater's perspective, but when it comes down to intermediates or beginners, I've heard it's a little aggressive. So just as something that would be great to make sure that we note that some of those facilities that we already have that are popular still have that room for more accessibility for younger or more novice individuals.
Yeah, I have a number of things, questions and different topics. And first I want to echo just the love for the water trail idea. Where that's been successful in cities that I've seen, it's huge for the city to have a water recreation opportunity. People love it. And then also this goal of walkability, having 10-minute walk, a park within 10-minute walk of kind of anywhere in the community. I know that's where, kind of parks planning is now going. I think it's great because I think that's really important. I wanted to respond to your comment, Mr. Waterman, about kind of partnerships. That is a good question about how do we leverage that. And one of the things that was discussed in the plan was this idea of like a parks board. And I'm not sure if there's a possibility of combining, we have the forestry board and whether a parks forestry board can be combined as one or if it makes sense to keep them separate. But I would think that would be an avenue to have that kind of interface with the public for engaging with folks, fundraising and different things. But also for that to be successful, it seems you need that citizen who is really engaged and really passionate about our parks to kind of step in as chair and be the leader, kind of providing that momentum. And I know like Lone Pine State Park, somebody, old friend of mine passed away, Richard Krull was somebody who was known up there, always doing weed pulling and just really committed to that park. If we had somebody in the community that had that kind of commitment level, that we could then build a parks board off of with that passion and use that enthusiasm to go out and make those partnerships. So that was somewhat reliant on park staff to be able to, maybe give that feedback to us and say, hey, we have this person, they're really showing real engagement and wanting to do something. And then maybe I could, go and meet and try to cultivate that and see if we can't turn it into, something a little more concrete with a board or something like that. I had a question about the plan to revise the HOA park requirements. I kind of like that idea. I've knocking doors this fall. Some of the neighborhoods I walked around, the parks that I saw that were part of the HOA, the new developments, some of them were like long and narrow with backyard fences that were 6 feet, creating this like canyon-like structure. And in one sense, it's kind of cool because it's a little bit different, but it's also, kind of limits what can be done in that green space in terms of recreation. And so I was curious to hear a little bit more about that idea of revising those standards and what we might be looking at there.
So that's a proposal that we're still working with staff on, and we need to work with not only the park staff, but also planning staff because of the implementation of PUD. So ideally, whatever a set of standards or a set of guidelines for if a PUD comes in and they're going to create up an HOA park, in order to meet the city's requirements, because when you create a PUD park or an HOA park, you're getting credit for that to allow you to do other things with a PUD. So there should be a set of guidelines, at least that the city can say, hey, we're looking at your HOA park and you're meeting the requirements, you're meeting 3 out of 5. And these other 2 things we would like you to meet. I suggested a size requirement, and then some bonus type things, and so we just need to talk about that in a lot more detail. Some of the discussions we've had with staff is that my proposals that I included in the plan were pushing the envelope a little bit in terms of what you could be allowed to ask a developer to do, and so it's an ideal kind of condition. And so again, that's one of the things to kind of work through again with planning and park staff, and then we're going to have to see kind of response from the development community as well. But those guidelines may not be included in the plan. It's just a discussion about how do you meet the needs of access and fill those gaps in areas where you don't have a neighborhood park? And if you're creating HOA parks that are basically authorized under city code, they should be filling those gaps in some way. And there's some developers that are doing an awesome job. So I've seen some parks in northern Kalispell that are really doing a great job. They're filling that need. But maybe others, there's still going to be some gaps. So that's what we're trying to figure. We're trying to thread the needle on that to get the right answer.
Yeah, that's what I found. I mean, walking some neighborhoods, you saw some of those parks, and they're like, these are great. And given the fact that, you know, we're so short of them up in the north, these are the parks that are available to folks. And some of them are great, and some of them are clearly an afterthought. And so having standards that kind of make sure we get the great ones rather than the afterthoughts would be good. And then just speaking on the development side of you know, these PUDs and stuff, you know, and the funding side of it too is I've really felt uncomfortable with, we have the recreation requirement and they almost always spend in their own development with these recreational facilities, and we get nothing in the city to maintain nearby parks or put a little bit of money towards an acquisition fund. And I really think we need like some portion that is mandatory in lieu, park in lieu funding. Like, I know it's optional at this point, but I feel like a portion of it, a percentage of it should be mandatory park in lieu, just so we're getting some funds in from these developments towards our parks program.
I mean, that could be a council direction. However, you can't do both. You can't require a park and ask for parks money, because it's got to be, you know, there's got to be a nexus there, how much you're requesting versus, you know, what you're getting out of it. So, you know, typically in the past 20 years, going back to goal number 1 was to be able to maintain our own parks. We have not been building or acquiring new parks. I think the Kalispell Park Line and Ashley Park will kind of be the newest ones. But, you know, for the most part, these developments are building substantial parks and park land for them. But certainly if council had a budget and had a funding mechanism, they all very well could be city parks. And I think developers wouldn't mind that, because they'd rather not maintain it themselves. So it's more this, if the city wants to own and maintain them, then certainly the developers would even build it. City pretty much just takes the keys and runs it. It's going to take a change in policy and a change in direction and a change in funding in order to do that. But we wouldn't be able to require them to build parks, then also dedicate land and do this and do that. So there would have to be a nexus there, but certainly, like I said, if there's a change in policy and we have the funding, they absolutely could be city parks. So.
Yeah, and I wasn't necessarily thinking both create a park and acquire land for parks. More, maybe the requirement for their recreation would be reduced a little bit, so that some of that money would go towards a fund that wouldn't by itself acquire. Maybe it's just maintenance. I mean, it probably acquires just too big of a, you know, a stretch for the funds we would get. But at least put a fund that then goes towards maintenance of the area parks in that part of town.
So you can't use cash in lieu for maintenance either. It would have to be for construction, so that goes back to state law. And we tend to feel that it's better for the developer to build a park for that community. Now, we've taken cash in lieu or parks in lieu if there's a nearby park, that then we could use that money for capital improvements. But if, say, it is on the north end of town and there is no parks, we'd rather them build a park, because we wouldn't really have anywhere to put that money for them. And we would expect that if we're going to take money from a developer for a park, that it should be serving that development, or at least in that vicinity. So that's the general direction we've had at this point.
Okay. In terms of the, you know, I noted a lot of discussion in the plan about this, you know, the water park and the fact that the current facility is difficult to maintain and so on. I'm just wondering how much of that is because the facility's outside, and if we had an indoor facility, I mean, I know pools and stuff generally are a problem to maintain. Is it the fact that it's outside just makes it that much worse, or would we be solving much by putting it inside facility? And is it possible to just like enclose our existing system and have it heated through the winter so that, you're reducing the winter weather impacts, or is that, I don't know if I'm on track at all in terms of what the problems are, but.
So I've used this analogy before with council about pool and the maintenance of it. So imagine starting your car first thing in the morning, turning it on full throttle, letting it run for 11 weeks straight, and turning it off and walking away. The damage that is done, and without being able to like consistently be in there, keep the seals on the pumps wet, doing maintenance activities throughout the time. So typically we'll start the facility, we get everything kind of situated and going, and we get all our tweaks made, and then we turn the facility off. And then we have to go through that whole startup process again. My opinion, and again, it's my opinion, I think that a facility that runs all the time, you don't run seals that dry, you don't run into air issues with trying to balance the system out. An outdoor facility does have unique issues like strainer baskets and the sand filter. So all the environmental things that happen also compound what we do. So it's difficult from there. Aquatics facilities are about a 20-year lifespan with the equipment that goes into it, how they operate. So you will have ongoing maintenance. Whether you build a brand new facility, you can almost bet that in 20 years you're going to replace pumps and boilers and all the mechanics of the system that go into operating it. So we've been compounded with some design issues. So lessons learned, all of us have had different experiences. We've been to other facilities trying to work through some nuances. And I think there's some efficiencies that were missed when developing our pool. And so we've created workarounds, or we understand it so we can work through those things. So I think, you have a 20-year-old facility, you have an aging infrastructure, it's outdoor, so the elements do play a factor. We gel coated the slides, preserving the lap pool last year by putting a liner in, looking at putting a different type liner in the lazy river, all to preserve what's there, but you still have the mechanics that go on, and it's an outdoor facility. So I think long term, again, we've had the conversation about aquatics. We've heard lots of the community members say that we need an indoor facility. We've had people mention Currents down in Missoula, that type of facility. So we feel that it warrants at least having some kind of study. Look at what we've got going on, have an architect come through the facility, look at it with a fine-tuned comb from their perspective, provide that feedback, get community input on what the community wants, and then put price tags to it all. Like what can we afford? As far as closing it, I would think there's some nuances because we do have huge grade changes from one side of the park to the other. I'm not an architect or an engineer, but I don't know if you could, but I guess with enough engineering, anything's plausible. But again, where it's built for a year-round facility, I'm not sure that it's the best place. Parking's a premium at times. And do you want to give up green space for more parking? It is built on top of a bunch of backfill material. So there used to be a swamp area there, and there actually used to be a water channel from the river that used to cut through the park as well, that would feed down Woodland Connector and towards Willow Glen. So there's springs in there that we deal with, not only on the trail, but we have to keep ballast inside the tank in the wintertime to make sure that the lap pool doesn't pop out of the ground. So there's lots of things to consider. And when we were talking with Mike, it was like, there's a lot to it. We were giving him all this stuff like through a fire hose, and he's like, I think this is a good place to do a study. So we wanted to step back and yes, it's worth the investment right now, but I think the community and I think council would appreciate going through that to see what exactly do we have and where are we going to be in another 10 to 15 years with the improvements that we put in there. Mm-hmm. And is it worth doing again in another 10 to 15 years, or is it something that the community would like to see us go in a different direction or operate two different facilities, or try to figure out how to enclose the existing facility.
Okay. And I guess staying on the woodland topic, and difficult questions, but with the fishing pond idea, winter hockey, so with the winter hockey, I mean, we have a rink there that is adjacent, right? I haven't been down, I don't go down there much in the wintertime, so, what are they using for the winter hockey?
So the pond is unique. It's a 3-foot pond, which, you know, a lot of water around our valley is much deeper than 3 feet. So it had that uniqueness of being shallow. What's happened over the course of the last 10 years is the weather patterns don't hold enough cold weather to make enough ice for us to get our equipment out. So typically what you see down there now is you will see people at their own risk moving snow around, but what you'll also find is that ice is probably 6 inches. Like there's 6 inches of water and there's a little bit of ice. So the risk of them falling in or doing anything is they're going to get muddy boots. But for us to go down there and do anything, it's not cold enough for us to put water on there or bring our equipment down because all we're doing is tearing up the ice. So weather patterns haven't been really conducive to that. And I think we've had a week that we've been able to have ice down there. And I don't know that it was true 7 days, but 1 week out of the winter time, we've been able to do this. Only a few years ago, we were holding the Pond Hockey Classic down there. So, you know, in a short span of time, you're seeing weather patterns not conducive to making ice. As far as hockey and figure skating and open skate, Flathead Valley Hockey Association does have that up at the at the facility, and we've always tried to maintain some ice down there for the public because it's been the historic use of the park. So we wanted to maintain it, but also we have to be cognizant the weather's not allowing that at this point. As far as making it a pond for fishing, I think those are discussions council will need to take up and talk about. Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a liability because we're now some depth. I think I remember Dylan and I have a conversation 11 to 12 feet deep, at least at some point, with some structure to keep the waters at certain temperatures. So, you know, that would be something, you know, how do we make it known there's a different use and that, you know, that 3-foot pond or that 6-inch depth that you're used to is really 12 feet out there, and making sure the public knows, and internal discussions of what that would look like. But again, if one use is going away and it's just sitting there and doing nothing, it's great to be able to re-envision and reimagine what could happen there. And you have a partner that's willing to, you know, work with the city to do that, you know, some of the heavy lifting essentially is great. I will say that from that first discussion, I know that FWP has talked to community members because they've reached out and said, we want to partner. We want to be part of the conversation. So I think, you know, again, that's an opportunity where we don't have a lot of funds, but we end up with a partner that we can leverage their expertise and their funds in order to reimagine, revitalize, and address something that's in a park. But again, that would be a council direction that we'd have to go through. And based on our conversations years ago with FWP, we felt that it was appropriate to have a master plan for the park so that council can vet all those ideas and that we can talk to the community and say, okay, you've had chances for input, you've provided feedback, council's moved forward, here's how we're going to do things. And as funding shows up, as our budget, you know, changes, we can look at that low-hanging fruit and start making some incremental steps into some of the changes that maybe council would like to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think certainly if the hockey is with the weather changes isn't really viable anymore, it makes sense to make use of the pond in a way that the community would appreciate. And you know, that there is a liability issue there, but with signage and lots of publicity on it, hopefully we can take care of that. But yeah, so I don't know when that would come forward, but I personally would like to see it. And I know I talked to Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. I know there's some desire to look at the hydrology and kind of water effects there and stuff. And they said that possibly some of their funds might be able to go towards some of that work if it meant that it gets us to a fishing pond at the end of the road. So appreciate Fish, Wildlife, and Parks for that opportunity as well. And maybe we can take advantage of that. So I know it's getting late. Pickleball courts, I was surprised this was not on my radar, but when the master plan started coming up for discussion last year, I started hearing from a lot of folks about pickleball. Didn't realize it was quite that popular, but it is. But I know it's also an issue of they're kind of loud, and so if you're in a neighborhood, the neighbors don't like it, so it's kind of a tricky question. I know it was mentioned in the plan, so we're looking at it. Do we have good options for converting some of our tennis courts to pickleball courts in an area that's not near residences that we can take advantage of that and give some of these folks more variety of opportunities for pickleball?
So what we've done is what we've told the pickleball community, or at least the people that have reached out to us, is that as we go to resurface courts, we will add lines to those courts so that we only have two parks with 2 courts apiece. We do have a partnership with FVCC and the school district for courts out at FVCC, but again, that's not just ours as far as management. But as we move forward, we had a discussion today about identifying, because of noise and issues, and as a means to address that, we would look to identify through the master plan potential areas that would may be suitable for that. But then again, it would circle back to the funding aspect. We traditionally look at our deferred maintenance and we concentrate over there. So anything that's new, we've always looked for partners, and that's how we got the Kalispell Boulder project, the Positive Play. So when we do have pickleball people come in, we talk about partnerships. Being a 501c3, we have land. It's easier for you to fundraise, and looking for those opportunities to leverage both of us and making those opportunities happen. So far, we haven't been able to get a group together, but there is interest out there. But we know through the master plan, at least for us to identify areas that would be appropriate, so that when those conversations come up or funding is accessible for a project like that, we can say through the master plan, these are appropriate.
Maybe similar to that is disc golf, kind of wayfinding around disc golf. I was surprised. Another one I was surprised about, had a friend who was a disc golfer, came out, went to Loris Park, and I was shocked at how many people were out there doing disc golfing, and like it's quite the thing. But they don't have the wayfind. You didn't know necessarily which pad was like the next pad to throw to. You had to kind of figure it out just by eyeballing it. I think we had wayfinding back in the day, but they got vandalized or just old or whatever. So maybe partnerships with groups or whatever to try fundraise to help with that. I know there was some discussion recently with folks about the Dan Johns Field scheduling and some concerns about that. I wanted to follow up on and see how that conversation went, and if there's kind of a resolution to some of the concerns that were expressed about scheduling there.
Yeah, so we had a meeting and we told them the nuances of how it's scheduled. So primarily anybody that's under the kids sports umbrella, they're first and foremost. We're second. Anything outside of that is third. And as the new council members, we showed them a graphic of the Northwest Fields. Mike alluded it to his PowerPoint. So there's a stormwater project that Public Works did that we partnered with to put 8 more additional fields on. Because one of the things that's happening is there's just not enough availability for everybody, including us. Stephanie and her team, our recreation superintendent, they struggle. Last year, the day of an event, we got moved from our fields. Mind you, we had worked all spring to coordinate all of the schedules, but because of a change in their use, they moved us, and so we had to scramble and move ourselves to different location, and work with another user group. So there is some complexities to it, but we explained the process, how to walk through it. The goal is for us to meet with kids sports representatives to talk about long-term schedule setting, because we do feel that as we get towards spring, the schedules aren't as thorough as they need to be. So a lot of times we have to reach out and say, okay, we have an opportunity to rent this, rent a field out, and we need to know if there's availability because it's really vague. And it becomes a problem for us. And of course, we want to rent the fields out when it's appropriate because that's revenue that generates to offset the maintenance out there. So it doesn't behoove us to turn away rentals when it's an opportunity for us to bring in some kind of funding to offset what happens out there. There's other complexities like letting fields rest after certain events because there's such an intense use. We can't do back-to-back events. But anyways, I think through those discussions, there's a better understanding, and we're still working towards bringing an event back or bringing an event to the facility. It's just going to take a little bit of more legwork to get to that point.
Okay, thank you. I'll skip some of these and for the sake of time. Just on page 154 and 179, they talk about riparian setbacks, but it's not consistent with our code on our riparian buffers. And so I just want to make sure that, our references to that are consistent with our code. There was mention of our 2006 plan, the referencing an Ashley Creek Park and an Ashley Meadows Park. I'm just wondering if that's the same location as our current Ashley Creek Park. It was. And then the Ashley Meadows Park, where was that located?
We'd have to bring the plan out, but there was lots of parks identified on there. But we'd be happy to get the graphic and send it out to council.
Yeah, I was curious that one, and then there was reference to a undeveloped western park. It wasn't the northwestern park, it was...
No, Western Park does exist. It's off of Western Drive, so it's kind of a dead-end, small cul-de-sac, one parking spot, but it's easily missed. Yeah. So it looks kind of like it's the backyard to some townhomes and private residence, really. I believe the long-range goal in 2006 or even before was to acquire land on the other side and bridge, have some kind of pedestrian bridge to, I forget what street it is, 7th Avenue or something like that, and being able to have park on both sides and then have some kind of pedestrian crossing.
Okay. The last little bit here, just wanted to talk a little bit about homeless use in our park. I know that's a big issue, and part of the issue that comes up is defecation in our parks, and because they don't have access to bathrooms. I'm wondering about bathrooms being open 24 hours. I know there's a winter issue, having closed them with some frozen pipes and that sort of thing, but is it possible to, at least in the summertime, have them open 24 hours so that, folks can have access to a bathroom? We're not getting defecation kind of out in our parks, but also whether or not there's like a winter option of outhouses, or I know there's these bathrooms that are created specifically with homeless in mind. They're hard to vandalize, they're hard to sleep in, they're hard to do drugs in, but they're really expensive. So that's the flip side of it. Is there an opportunity to kind of look at that and figure out, is there something we can do to reduce, provide bathrooms for folks who are living on the streets, but also being aware of the risks of vandalism, drug use, and everything else? It's a complicated, difficult question, I know.
So we do have portables in the high use parks. So Woodland and Lawrence Park do have winners accessible all winter long.
Oh, okay.
The problem becomes in the time that I've been here, we've had 2 major fires on bathrooms that have been left open 24 hours. I will say most of our vandalism that happens in parks that have bathrooms open 24 hours happens after hours and becomes problematic. I think several times this past summer we've had to close Woodland down just because of vandalism. So it's really difficult decision. When we don't have them open after hours, we don't have as many problems. When we leave them open 24 hours, that's when we end up with a lot of issues. I believe last year, it could be wrong in the years, but our field staff went and remodeled Lawrence Park bathrooms, and within weeks, it was demolished. So it's a difficult decision, and you know, from our standpoint, you're trying to protect an asset. I understand the concern, but you're like the thousands of dollars that we go through in vandalism is just really hard to continue doing, just because our budget doesn't really afford that. I mean, we come to you and ask, you know, for our budget allocation, and then we invest into, you know, making things as nice as we can, and then all of a sudden the thousands of dollars we spent are ruined, and now we're scrambling to figure out how to piecemeal it back together with funds that aren't allocated. So it's a longer, deeper conversation. And you know, I know years ago that Parks and Recreation, we partnered with, or we didn't partner, we hired a service to even go through and lock the Depot Park bathrooms, because it was either way you were spending that money. So it was easier on staff not to have to remodel the bathrooms and pay for that service. But we were closing them down, I want to say 7-ish or 8-ish at night, and they would make sure nobody's in there. And we're looking at Ashley Creek Park. We're looking at some, I know the bathrooms you're talking about, but we're looking at some cues for PD, so that as they go into the park, drive by the park, there's some visual cues to know if somebody's locked up for the evening in one of the restrooms. And the other thing is giving them a fob system, so they'll be able to unlock it and escort those people out. So we're trying to look at different means to address the issues we have, and trying to figure out a means to keep things open longer. But there's that funding gap of, you know, understand serving the community and giving them a place to go, but also how do we protect that asset and not continue to spend thousands of dollars in renovation costs that, in my opinion, are unnecessary.
But we do have, you were saying, porta potties in Woodland and
Lawrence.
and Lawrence.
Yeah.
So there is that. I mean, those are available.
Yep.
Yeah. And then and this isn't necessarily parks, but related to parks and homeless, just in terms of the camp clearing, and the policing work on that, whether or not we, how much advance notice we give for camp clearing, and whether or not we provide an opportunity for our social service providers to do kind of outreach prior to a camp clearing, or participate, and so that they're there to engage with the homeless folks during camp clearings, to try to connect them with resources in the community.
I'm not aware of any instances where social services has been with them. Typically what'll happen is we get a complaint. A KPD officer will go out there. You know, we have parks rules as well. So in accordance with parks rules, they would be asked to move. But our KPD does kind of, based off of their discretion, kind of see what's going on, how much stuff do they have, how much time is it going to take. It's not one of those instances where you got to get up and go now. They'll usually give them a couple hours to move their items, at which point, a couple hours later, Parks goes out there and moves any items that are left. And anything over $25 the city has to keep in store for a period of time. But that usually the case. If they've left it, they don't want it. It's trash in there. And since they take what they want and they're gone, and at that point, Parks follows it up with cleanup. But at this point in time, it's not, to my knowledge, we're not being assisted by social services in any way at that point in time.
Yeah, and I would like to see just some sort of kind of procedure where we do, have somebody on police staff, whether it's I know we have the co-responder, that might be a good option, but somebody who is familiar with the social services providers and can make that connection, and provide the opportunity at least for them to do some outreach prior to a camp clearing. I say that because, obviously some folks, they're there because a lot of times they're not making those connections with social services, but sometimes when you're getting frustrated and it's like, God, I have to move again and stuff, they're, that frustration level might be the opportunity where they say, hey, maybe I'm ready for a change at this point. And, I don't know, I guess I look to council, I know it's not specifically to the parks plan, but just, having an opportunity to do some outreach related to those camp sweeps.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is probably a question for the city manager. Is that not a policy decision that we would need to discuss and bring back as a new policy?
It would be that exactly. So if that's something council wants to discuss in the future, certainly open to that consideration. But yeah, at this point in time, we're just enforcing park rules, and that's the way it's handled. And if council wanted it to be handled, in a different manner, then certainly something we could discuss in the future.
Not trying to shut it down. I'm just,
No, I know,
I think
but-
we're going down a rabbit hole on a policy issue.
Right, and that's, I think, saying we should bring it back for discussion is legitimate.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Part of that to me is coordinated entry. That's where we work with our social services, and I believe that city manager has been invited to and is going to be attending the collaborative housing solutions. That ends up being one of those, again, partnerships that's able to help provide that. One, coordinated entry is where we are trying to make sure that those who are in crisis have a chance for outreach to go to them and have options to do that. And that sometimes happens in that collaborative housing solutions model. And I also know that that's one of their priorities, has just to have for the collaborative, to have an outreach plan, and how in partnership we can make sure that agencies are partnering to make sure that some of that outreach happens. And so agree that there's a policy decision to be made, but I also think that there's an opportunity when we look at city manager engaging with the collaborative housing solutions group to see where we might be able to also find some solutions so that there's some coordination. Because that, I agree with your sort of summary of it. It's the gaps between our systems that people end up in crisis in a public space disconnected. And I think that we have to be able to, and there's just a mutual fund that can happen between coordination between agencies, law enforcement. So hope that maybe that might also just be a conversation to be invested in to see what the partners are doing outside of our work.
Absolutely.
Correct. Yeah. The difficulty in that would be the timing. How do you get us, somebody to come with a KPD officer at the time you got a complaint within the hours that, because, when we get complaints, we tend to follow up on them in a certain amount of time, and making sure all of that's coordinated appropriately would probably be the most difficult thing. So not that it's impossible, but just we would need to have those discussions about what a process like that would look like, what a timeline would look like, and go from there.
Anything else? Yeah.
Just as a follow-up, I think the larger thing that we're looking at and investing in, and this is just my Parks and Rec knowledge, is that actually the plan that really helps us have spaces that are well lit, well used, utilized, and then easy to patrol. Having sort of the dark corners and the spaces in our parks that are not working, that's where the master plan is actually helping, just systematically help us create a better park system that is highly utilized, safe to use, well lit, to be able to get patrols through. Sort of some of the solutions they were talking about with Ashley Creek, but that makes it a safer system. But ultimately also having our citizens out there able to participate and utilize it, that's the best citizen patrol system that we have out there is just user groups who are actively engaged in our parks and that they aren't ignored spaces.
Okay, so maybe something to revisit another day, when appropriate. Anything else about the Parks Master Plan? Yeah, Mr. Nally.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just ask one question. I know from the county, I was involved with an organization that wanted to start a foundation, a 501c3. That interaction between government and a nonprofit, I don't know if it would be the same, so I guess I'd like to ask legal if city government can direct towards a foundation, or if we have to keep a standoff, kind of work together.
I'm not, what are we talking about in regards to what?
To a foundation, to trying to start a foundation or direct a foundation to do, or
Oh, okay.
try to work together. I know at the county level, there's a separation of foundation and county government
Okay.
that has to take place. So I just didn't know if in the city, if that same legal aspect holds from the state.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not real familiar with what you're talking about, but I'll certainly take a look into that.
Okay.
Mr. Dowd.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to let the council and Mr. Mayor, that I do have a hard stop at 9 tonight. I gotta pick up my kid. I can't watch. I'm really upset because I wanted to hear all the stuff from our potential council members here live, but I will review the recording.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dowd. So with that, anything else on that from staff? Okay. We will move on to the presentations from the council members for the Ward 3 vacancy. Mr. Nygren, do you want to?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I'll keep it quick so Sid maybe could hear from at least one or two. But effective last Monday, Mayor Hunter was sworn in as the mayor, vacating his seat. In regards to a vacancy, the city code basically relies on state law. State law requires the council as a majority to elect a new council, or appoint, I should say, a new council member within 30 days. The process for doing that is not clear in state law. However, the city council has done it a number of times in the past. I included a number of ways they'd done it going back to 2014 and 2007. At the last meeting, council, we did put out a notice to Ward 3 property owners or business owners, or residents within Ward 3 of the notice of the opening. We got 6 applicants. The 6 applicants are here, and looking at just getting some input from them, as well as some direction from council as to how they want to proceed at the next meeting on the 20th, and that's all I got.
So in terms of process, any questions? I think we talked about it last week a little bit, but have the presentations, go back, think about it. We can kind of check in with everybody, but that sound good? Okay. So we're going to have each folks give a presentation. We'll do it by alphabetical order by last name. I apologize for the late nature of the meeting, but this will give you some ideas to what you're signing up for. So first up, Madison Evans. Please step forward to the mic.
Is it already on? Oh, yes, it is. Okay. So, hello, my name is Madison Evans. Do you need me to say my address?
No.
Okay, perfect. I'm really excited to be here and a little nervous, so you're probably going to see me looking down a lot. I've lived in Kalispell and Ward 3 for as long as I can remember. As I get older and continue to grow with the community, the old saying, leave the place better than you found it, really resonates with me. I had the privilege to grow up in the Valley, and now I want to make a more concerned effort to leave my hometown better than I found it as a child. I know firsthand how important the library was for me growing up. I couldn't wait to spend my summers at the pool or take part in summer programs offered by Parks and Rec, especially with scholarship programs. These are literally just a few of the many reasons of how my community helped shape me. And City Council has a powerful direct impact on these services that I know makes our community stronger and safer. As Kalispell continues to grow, I think it is more important and beneficial as ever to have a diverse group on City Council to match our growing population, which I do think I can offer. Different perspectives and experiences can only help us grow in a more encompassing manner. The goal is to be the voice of your ward and collaborate to create the best system and support for our community as possible. Whether it be my education or work experience, I have always shaped my pursuits over what's the meaning and impact. Meaningful work that impacts the greater good. In my field of work, therapy, active listening, conflict management, and collaboration is the name of the game. I believe I could utilize these skills to be a voice for the residents, meet with people on the same level, be open, and shape positive change for our community. I'm very excited about this opportunity and the possibilities that it presents. It would be an honor to learn from and work with the council if given the opportunity. Thank you so much. I'll keep it short and sweet.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Next up would be Arthur Freiheim.
Thank you. And that's the second time somebody's pronounced my last name correctly today, so I'm kind of surprised at that. It's not an easy one. So I don't have a prepared statement. I wasn't sure exactly what form you're going to go, but I'll try and keep it quick because I know some of you have to run. I just wanted to say, I'm offering myself up for this. I didn't know who all was going to be doing it. I heard some rumors. But other than that, there's nothing definitive. So I just wanted to, put my name forward, and it's an opportunity to serve my community. I've done that through my work. I've worked as a teacher, not always in this district, but I've been a sub. I've been a para in this district, and I've also taught out in the rural schools, which feed into Flathead High School. And I just want to say thank you for, opportunity to let us all come up here and speak. You've probably, a lot of you, if you've been on city council before, you've heard me come up or you've seen me in the audience. And a lot of people, I wish more people, I'm glad that so many people applied for this, but I wish more people would actually come to city council and engage and even just listen and watch, even if they didn't have anything. Usually, if we got a really contentious issue, we'll get lines out the door and whatnot. But just stuff like this where we're going over our plans for the next 20 years, I think it's important. And, I say that because, I know this is a responsibility. It, doesn't pay full time, but it is a large responsibility. And that I can make it 7 p.m. on a weeknight is not a time that I have a conflict for. If it was 7 a.m. on a weekday, I probably would not be applying. So, but this slot is not a problem for me. I'd be happy to answer any more questions if you want to know more about. I mean, I've lived at my current address for a little over 10 years at this point. I don't know if I could say I've lived in Ward 3 because I live really close to the Ward 3, Ward 4 boundary, and I think the boundary might have crossed me at some point because I think I remember being in Ward 4, but that might be a faulty memory. But yeah, I have had some thoughts about things like, snow removal, which we've gotten better at, but how we can improve there, about the parks, because I have used, as I was going to the water slides when I was a little kid over the summers. So if you have any specific questions, but I figure whoever you choose, it's going to be a learning experience. And, it's two years to learn the job, and then you have to face the voters, and they get to toss us out. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freiheim. James Herring.
Got to time myself here. If I'd have known this job required a speech, I probably wouldn't have applied for it. So Oh, man. Hello, my name is James Herring. Your Honorable Mayor, members of council, fellow applicants, 1998. Got a job at Semi-Tool, and I'm currently a software engineer at Class 1 Technology in Evergreen. My leadership experience is I lead the software engineering department at my work, and I did a 3-year term as elder at First Presbyterian Church on Main Street in Kalispell, which very much a committee like this, regular meetings, lots of boring stuff. You know, we've all been there. I know you guys have. So what I've learned as a leader, communication is the hard part. Communicate, communicate, communicate. I'll say that a million times. You'll get tired of me hearing me saying that. I know that votes on the councils have real effects on the people, and lots of people will not agree with your decisions. I've also learned the hard way that not doing all you can to be informed causes long nights of introspection and regret. Also, that a council member must understand both sides of the issue. The research says that most people make decisions quickly based on emotional feedback, emotional response, and then backfill the facts to support that decision. My goal as a member of the council would be to keep an open mind and make a decision as late as possible. I also understand that there are financial and resource constraints, that we must exist within those constraints of our budget and resources. I've learned that every budget, every number on the budget sheet has a story behind it. Getting and understanding the story to each number is often difficult and will take time, but it is essential. I understand that making decisions requires a long-term perspective. Excuse me. And that short-term decisions lead to long-term expensive problems. Why would I want this job? 378-page PDF to read before a Monday night meeting? I don't know. At least my letter was on 355, so I don't think many people read it. Why else would I want this job? My father worked as a in public service at the municipal level all of his career, and he taught me the value of public service. That dedicating your time to public service and to the citizens of Kalispell is an honor. To live in a vibrant city that you like requires time, your time and dedication, plus the time and dedication of other people on the council, staff, and citizens. Where'd page 2 go? Oh no, I gotta wing it. Anyway, that's about all I have to say. I had page 3, it didn't get printed. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I have, my vision of the council would be to keep this government going. I think the council's done an outstanding job through my tenure here in Kalispell, and I want to be a part of that. That's all I have. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herring.
I said,
Carleen Core. Next up.
All right, thanks. I'm actually gonna watch it right now on my drives.
My name is Carlene Kaur. I see my role somewhat similar to our new city manager, of the person who will now serve for 2 years in the role of the person who will now serve for 2 years in the role of a Ward 3 council person. I have that experience. I have served as the chairman of the Tax Increment Committee. I have served on the planning board. I have served in many organizations and in many roles that have provided, service to not only Ward 3 neighbors, but to this entire city. In some respects, the idea of Ward 3 is so exciting. I mean, Ward 3 is different from any other ward. First of all, it's got Main Street. And what is Main Street to cities? It's the heartbeat. When you lose your downtown, when you lose your Main Street, the heart of your city stops. And our downtown, interestingly enough, which falls into Ward 3, is, with folks that work there, many of them do not live in Ward 3. Half of the people that own the buildings don't live in Ward 3. And half of the people who have businesses there don't live in Ward 3. But the point is, they are in Ward 3, and they need to be represented. And although they do not vote for the person in Ward 3, it is a responsibility of the person of Ward 3 to represent them and their needs. The other interesting thing about Ward 3, and it's kind of, when you walk Ward 3, as some of you have when you've gone for election, as I have too, the differences are not that different. We can all say, yes, when you walk in Ward 3, the sidewalks on the eastern part of the side of Ward 3, you could turn your ankle because and there are no sidewalks on the western side of Ward 3. But all in all, when you look at Ward 3, sidewalks are not. Ward 3 is the heart of Kalispell, the absolute heart. So when I look at myself as a candidate, I know that I have no agenda. I don't have a political affiliation. I am interested in serving the people, my neighbors in Ward 3, and I am mindful of the fact that there is a thread that links every one of us here. It's this place. It's a love of this place. It's about doing what we think is best for this place. And we are trying our best. We won't always get it right.
And we had a project called Woodland Waterworks where we raised money to buy a new pump for the Woodland Water Park or the Woodland Pond. And that process and the involvement and the partnership with School District 5, I actually highlighted it in round 1 of my version of comments for tonight. But it was really probably the first time that I had a chance to be involved with a community-led activity that identified a need and then grew with the collective strength of not only my class, Mrs. Culver's 3rd grade class, but then also the partnership with the city. And I just recall feeling how powerful it was to be part of that solution and really loving it. And so again, 1987, 1988, so kind of following up to the 1970s thing. In the 80s, there was like also another little push there at the park, but it was a good partnership. And it was one that, again, just I think that as you talk about funding, it's really critical. So my name is Cassidy Kipp, and I did submit my letter, which outlines some of my technical skills, I think, that are complementary to what we have going on today, and the opportunity to sit in Ward 3 as a council person. A lot of my professional background does land use. We look at land use policy. We do low-income housing development utilizing the low-income housing tax credits. I've done a number of social service partnered with law enforcement to help mitigate risk for people that are out in the community, primarily the elderly and disabled who may not be able to live independently. So you got to see that in my letter, and I'm going to read right now for the sake of time so that we're not here forever, because I could talk forever. So I'm running for city council because Kalispell isn't just where I live, it's where I grew up, and more importantly, it's where I decided I wanted to raise my kids. So I came back here for a reason. I came back because I love it. This community gave me my start in life, and I care deeply about protecting what makes it special. So like a lot of longtime residents and folks who have spoken tonight, I've watched Kalispell grow, and some of this has happened very quickly at times. And this growth can be a very good thing, but it has to be managed with common sense. And so too many working people are sometimes priced out or they're marginalized. I think it's important to have a voice. I think that right now, traffic, infrastructure, at times are struggling to keep up. People feel like decisions are sometimes made without enough thought of the folks that actually live here. So I think these are all things that go into why I'm doing what I'm doing. As a social worker, I work with people every day who are doing everything right. They're working hard, they're raising their kids, and they're trying to pay their bills. But they're falling behind because of rising housing costs, lack of local services, or policies that don't reflect real life. I've seen firsthand what happens when problems are ignored until they become crisis. Fixing those problems early is not only the right thing to do, but it's the most responsible use of taxpayer dollars. I believe in a city government that sticks to its core responsibilities, keeping our neighborhoods and parks safe, maintaining our roads and our infrastructure, managing growth wisely, using tax dollars carefully. We need leadership that asks tough questions and watches every single dollar and makes sure that we're not pushing costs onto families who are already stretched thin, and also that we're not taking on responsibilities that shouldn't be the city's responsibility. So I'm not running to play politics or to push some kind of national agenda. I'm running because I live here, I know the people here, and I want Kalispell to stay a place where working families and seniors and young people can build a future. My son's 21 as of yesterday. He's a senior in college. When I graduated college, I got to come back home, and within a year, I purchased a home in Ward 3. When my dad graduated college, within a year, he purchased a home in Ward 3. I want that for my child so desperately to be an option. So again, if we lead with common sense, responsibility, and respect for our community, I believe that we can keep Kalispell strong for the next generation so that hopefully one of my 3 kids stays here. So I thank you. I think you guys have a really tough decision ahead of you. And I just think this is such a neat process, and what a cool reflection of Ward 3. The fact that we have 6 people showing up is pretty remarkable. So shout out to Ward 3, but thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Kipp. And last up, Dustin Leffridge.
Mr. Mayor, honorable members of the council, good evening. My name is Dustin Leffridge. I'm a proud resident of Ward 3, and I'm here because I care deeply about Kalispell, and because I believe that my background would be useful to this body. Let me briefly introduce myself. I'm a father of 2 young boys that are avid users of our parks department. And my 7-year-old came this evening because he and I both wanted to give him a chance to see how local government actually works. I'm a husband, a pilot, a coach with Parks and Rec, managing partner at a law firm just right down the street. Alongside my law practice, I volunteered to help Kalispell thrive. I've been involved with the Chamber's Downtown Forward Coalition, where we're working to find innovative solutions to ensure downtown continues to thrive. I also organized the successful Get Out the Vote campaign for the high school levy with One Brave Pack. My diverse law practice includes representing folks from Libby who were poisoned by the former mine. This decades-long litigation involves innovative thought, negotiation skills, and intense problem solving. As most of you know, running a local business also requires fiscal responsibility, managing people, and managing competing priorities. All of this professional and personal experience is transferable to this position, and I believe would make me an asset to complement all of you. At the end of the day, cities succeed because of decisions about finances, land use, housing, and infrastructure. These may not be the most exciting things in the world, but decisions made here shape people's lives and require thoughtful collaboration. If appointed, I can promise you this: I will listen more than I speak. I will listen carefully, I'll weigh competing interests, and be willing to make informed decisions even when there's no perfect answer. I'll take this role seriously. I'll read all the materials, such as the impressive draft report that you all read this evening, and will always come prepared and engaged. At best, local government is about stewardship, taking care of something that matters and leaving better than you found it. Those are the values that I'm working on passing down to my sons as well. I don't come with an agenda, an interest in a title, just a commitment to work hard, to listen carefully, and help find practical solutions to the issues that we'll face over the next few years. It would be an honor to serve with all of you. I'm happy to answer any questions here or later on, and I hope to get to know each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leftridge. I think at this point, if we have any clarifying questions or anything for our candidates. So at this point, I'll open it up to public comment, either about the Ward 3 vacancy or just general public comment. Please step forward, state your name. One online. Okay. With that, we'll turn to Mr. Nygren for city manager report.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I'll keep it brief. As you know, the last couple of years, the city has applied for a build grant for the south half of completion of the bypass for this, basically from Airport Road with the intersection of 93. The notice of funding opportunity for that grant has come out, so we have initiated conversations with MDT on that to look forward to hopefully working with them over the coming month here to get an application in to federal highways. Obviously, that'll take a resolution of support from the council here in the coming weeks. But in the meantime, I'm going to work with MDT on the details, what that grant would look like, and hopefully that would be a successful grant opportunity. As you know, that is a key component to Main Street. Also, just a reminder that next Monday, the office is closed for Martin Luther King's Day, and the meeting will be on Tuesday, the 20th. So that's all I got.
Great, thank you. We'll do council reports, and after Mr. Dowd's comment last week, I'll start this way and go around. Mrs. Gabriel?
I don't have anything to add other than I forgot that Tuesday was our meeting next week, so now I have a conflict. But anyway, darn it.
I've got nothing either.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who came, who was interested in serving in Ward 3. I know it takes a lot to put that together, and sometimes it's uncomfortable speaking in front of others. So thank you so much for taking the time and the energy to tell us why this is an important position for you. Appreciate that.
I'm much the same. I want to say thank you to all of you for expressing your interest. I've shared with the mayor that, we unfortunately will only pick one person. That'll be in our meeting next week, but seems that we have 6 people who are very interested in being more involved in Kalispell. So I appreciate that as well, and hope that everybody understands that the decision will be made next week in the meeting. But then also I hope that there always will be ways to engage and find other ways that all 6 of you are able to serve our community better, because I think all of you do express a Ward 3 spirit for also wanting to make our community better.
Ward
Two's good too.
Ward 4 isn't half bad.
All right.
Are you done, Cal? I too want to thank each of you. Good job. I would have a request for council. I don't like the emails back and forth and phone calls in discussing this. I would almost request a half-hour session before the next meeting so we can talk about what we know, what we feel, so that it's not an exchange of information on emails or phone calls. It would be nice to sit down and talk about the attributes that each of these folks came with and what would best serve us as a council. If you all agree with that, a closed session, if it's appropriate, prior to.
So are you asking for an executive session?
Yes.
That, you can't do that in this case.
Can't do it in this
You
case.
can do a special session and you could certainly, as a group, whittle it down to 3 and then go from 3. But yeah, with, holding an open appointment like this, you wouldn't be able to, it's no right to privacy in this instance. So you would have to hold a public
Why
meeting.
did I know you'd say something like this?
Sorry.
I just thought it was appropriate. And I don't like, when we can't talk together, it's not a decision by
Correct.
everybody. It's kind of being weighted by whoever's making the phone calls and they're doing a tally. But if that's the case, I guess it'll just be an open discussion in a public forum at the next meeting.
Yeah, and I think it's certainly an opportunity at the meeting for anybody to say whatever they want to say. My hope, I guess, by just kind of making the call is, obviously folks have put themselves out there to apply for the application, and it's not always an easy thing or necessarily, I think, the right thing to have kind of a discussion of who's higher and who's lesser and why you think that they're ranked that way. I mean, that's kind of uncomfortable a little bit. And so I just want to be a little bit respectful of the people who step forward, that they're not having that aired publicly. And so I think, yes, a discussion about why why the person coming forward is your choice, or but want to be careful a little bit about trying to rank in a public meeting.
Yep, I would agree.
Well, I also want to just echo what was said. Thank you all for stepping forward. Like I said, it's a difficult thing to do, and I appreciate that. And I do think it's reflective of Ward 3 that we have so many great candidates. So no matter the outcome, thank you all for putting your name forward. And we'll have a decision next week. So with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.